billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. La ilaha illallah. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I greet you, my brothers and sisters, with the noble and universal greeting of peace, the greeting that has been used by the prophets and messengers of our universal creator, Almighty Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we have the opportunity to continue our focus on our relationship with our Creator. And this is a really important part of life for human beings. Purpose, while we are here, according to the Quran, is to actually go beyond our ideas, which are largely falsehood, and become aware, and to have the experience of security with our Creator. So, verily in the remembrance of Allah, hearts experience assurance. When we have a relationship with our Creator, we experience already being okay. We experience assurance, reassurance, we experience security. This is a state of well-being. We have faith. Faith is not an idea in your mind or belief that you hold. Faith is the awareness, the adult awareness, and adult experiencing of your Creator, having a relationship with your Creator. Now, when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to retreat to the cave and be in contemplation and solitude, away from the Meccan marketplace and the people, he was able to go within, beyond his mind, beyond thinking, beyond relating to the people, beyond the people in his life, and he would be still and reflect. And in that space, an opening was created where the angel Gabriel, or Jibreel alayhi salam, came to him with a revelation. And the revelation was, read, recite, repeat with the awareness of your Lord who created you. And it goes on to say, who taught you the use of the pen, the use of which you knew not. So the first revelations that come down is to read or repeat or recite with the awareness of your Lord who created you from physical matter. Our bodies are produced from the sperm and egg cell, and we as physical bodies, or we as the physical forms that we are, have emerged from the sperm and the egg cell and have been produced into these sophisticated bioelectrical mechanical machines that we are. This body is, let me say it properly. And elsewhere in the Quran it says Allah breathed His Spirit into humanity. That we, doesn't say anywhere else, any other creation has the Spirit of Allah. He breathed His Spirit into us. And Islamic teaching confirms that at a certain point in gestation, when the sperm and egg cell become that zygote, and the cellular multiplication takes place with mitosis and meiosis, and the body starts being developed, that at a certain place the soul enters, or the soul occupies in a certain sense, or the soul connects with the body, whatever you want to say. So the Prophet, it wasn't when he was contemplating, Jibreel came and said to him, I want you to believe something. I want you to accept the following beliefs. And he didn't begin to say, right, from now, in the month of Ramadan, you must fast, and you must tell everybody to fast in the month of Ramadan. And now, you must pay redistribution of wealth tax, zakat. You must pay it, and everybody must pay it. And you know what? From now on, whether you understand this or not, you must read your salah. So, and furthermore, you must start doing Hajj, and everybody tell them all to do Hajj. So, what I'm saying is, for the first 12 or 13 years of the prophetic mission, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was guided to a relationship of awareness with his Creator, to become aware of what we would call a universal Creator, Almighty God. He was guided. Read, repeat, or recite with the awareness. In the name of means with the awareness of. With the awareness of your Lord. Like, say this, being aware of your Lord. And who is your Lord? The one who created you. Caused you to have a physical form and breathed His Spirit into you. So, there wasn't this thing of, now you must just read the kalima. First thing I got to tell you, the Prophet Muhammad, Angel Jibreel didn't say, first thing I want you to do is you must read the kalima. Say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. If you say that, you're a Muslim. Never told him that. You get what I mean? Never told him about these pillars of Islam that people today, if you want to become a Muslim, they'll tell you, read this kalima, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Now these are the 5 pillars, and you must follow these 5 pillars. And you must just believe these things that you are told to believe. There's angels and all that sort of thing. And if you just believe that, you're saved. This wasn't told to the Prophet. And the Prophet didn't tell people like that, which you may be hearing today. Or people might be understanding Islam is about today. The Prophet ﷺ was guided to a relationship with his Creator. A relationship where he would be aware and experience security. He would experience well-being. And he would guide others to become aware of their Creator, our universal Creator, and they would have an experience of security as well. And from which then an organized system based on true faith, on the security that is called being a mu'min, a secure person, a system of living, organizing people and guiding them to relate to life and their bodies and each other, that is Islam, would be built upon. This would be a theocracy. You understand? The first thing is not Islam. The first thing is Allah. Because the Prophet was guided to Allah and guided others to Allah, Allah completed His favor to the believers and gave them Islam. Islam is for the believers who believe in Allah. What point is it if you don't really believe in Allah? I'm talking about actually have a relationship with Allah. If you don't actually have a relationship with Allah, you are a denier of Allah, you're an associating partners with Allah, or you're a munafiq, a hypocrite. You say you believe in Allah in the last day. Is there any real value? Granted, Islam has wonderful ways. Save your money, don't gamble, don't throw your money away. Don't drink alcohol, stay away from alcoholism, all this kind of thing. Behave honorably. Eat halal and tayyib. I will remind you, and tayyib, because people of today just focus on the halal and they don't even know what halal really means, and they don't even focus on the tayyib. So there's a lot of value in Islam. A lot of value in it for humanity. But the Quran tells us it's about Iman and Amal. It's about faith and conduct. And it puts it in that order. It's about Iman, your relationship with Allah, and your conduct, how you show up in the world, how you behave in the world, honorably or dishonorably. Do you support natural living, nurturing living, nourishing living? Are you claiming Allah's good in this world as in the world beyond, where we as human beings can be with each other with love and compassion in our hearts that Allah put, and relate to each other with love and compassion in our hearts that Allah put into our hearts, placed therein? You get what I mean? So we can live having a relationship with Allah and enjoying Islam. From Iman, we can have Islam. If there's Iman, there can be Amal. Islam is a lot about Amal. You know what I mean? Iman is your relationship with Allah, becoming aware. And so it could make sense why the Bedouin Arabs, they who came to the Prophet, the desert-dwelling Arabs, when they came to the Prophet and they said, we are believers, we have Iman, and the revelation was revealed, do not say you're a believer. Rather say you are one who is submissive in religion, but Iman has not entered into your heart. This is a Quranic verse, very often overlooked one, because therein it gives you the secret that many people are submissive in religion and they believe they're believers, but they're not really believers, for Iman has not entered into their heart. You see, when Iman enters into your heart, that compassion that Allah put there, that love that Allah put there, can come forward, and you can live with each other in tranquility. You get what I mean? But if there's no Iman, if you don't have a relationship with Allah, what kind of relationship you're going to have with yourself, your body, your life? What kind of relationship you're going to have with others, including family, spouses, friends, and so on? What kind of relationship you're going to have with them? You get what I mean? Some people, they don't know about Allah and they don't know about Iman. They have a belief in Islam. Some people can be said to be worshipping Islam. They're not worshipping Allah. They are worshipping Islam. There are some people who worship Islam. Their understanding of Islam. They don't understand that Islam is a favor of Allah to humanity of how to live. You understand? But they're worshipping this way of living. This is right, this is wrong, from their understanding and perception of it. It's not even the real Islam. You know? Because it's only somebody who has a relationship with Allah, who has Iman, can have Amal. And that's what Allah tells us. The Quran says, for those who focus on Amal without Iman, then it is as if a person is looking in the desert for water and sees a mirage, and they take that sand, putting it into their mouth, thinking they're drinking water. It's an illusion, basically. You get what I mean? People who don't have Iman and are trying to live with Amal, it's a mirage. It's not what it seems. You know, I have known many people who seem to be good people in society, very good people, help the whole world, but end up killing themselves, literally suicide. I know people. I've heard of them, some of them. Others I've seen. Because they tried to be good. They tried to be good. They tried to be fair. They tried to be nice. But They didn't know the fairness of Allah. They didn't know the niceness of Allah, the raham of Allah, the grace of Allah. They didn't know it. They didn't know God. There are people in the world who have lived. Some of them have been religious personalities from outside of Islam, and they have been seen as humanitarians and so on and so forth. But until you have your relationship with Allah, you don't have your relationship with Allah. Until you have your relationship with Allah, until you become aware of that presence that is primary, the one alone that really exists, our source, sustainer, supporter and satisfier, our supply, until you become aware of our cause and continuer, our carer and considerer, the championer, the cherisher of humanity, until you become aware of Allah and have a relationship with Allah, you don't have Iman. You could be submissive in religion, your brand of Islamism that you think you're following, your guru, Maulana Guru and gang told you, and you and whoever your guru was, your parent or anybody, and you followed them. They're telling you their brand and version of Islam that somebody told them or they made up themselves. You know what I mean? Allah is the guide. Allah guided the Prophet. Allah guides all of us. Allah guided all of us. There's only Allah. Allah is the guide. There's no Allah and anybody to guide us. There's only Allah, the actual, who created humanity that is temporary, apparent. Allah is the real. The will of Allah is real. This world is virtual. It's made up. We are made up beings in a made up world, made up by Allah. We did not make ourselves up. We did not make this world up. It's temporary. It will cease to be. It will cease to be. But Allah who created the world is and will always be and will continue to be eternal, everlasting, ever living. You know what I mean? Tawheed is the first pillar of Islam. The first pillar is Tawheed. Not just a belief in a God, but Tawheed. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was guided to a relationship of Allah, one of Tawheed, one of submission. You see? And he didn't just say, right, I got instruction from today, every Ramadan we're going to keep fasts, but first we must just say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and then we'll keep our fasts, and we'll read our salah, and we'll go for Hajj, and we'll give our zakat. There was nothing of that sort in the first half of the prophetic mission or so. There was only guiding people to the presence that alone really is our universal creator, and guiding people to have an awareness and experience of Allah, our universal creator, and to establish a relationship with Allah, to have belief in our hearts. The Quran tells us, human beings, when Adam and Eve asked for forgiveness in the Quran, when the Prophet Adam was repentant, Allah said, there you and your people will remain in a fallen state until guidance comes to you. Those who receive the guidance will no longer be insecure. They will become believers. Those who don't receive the guidance, their hearts will remain diseased, and the disease will be expanded. They will be left to stray. You understand? Until guidance comes to you, and you receive that guidance, and you submit to your Creator, you become aware of and have a relationship with Allah. Until that happens, you have not received guidance, you will be insecure, there will be a disease in your heart, and you will be left to stray. The Quran tells us this is the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim alayhi salam was in the same boat as everybody else is. He, not to be confused with Nuh alayhi salam, that's a different boat, you know what I mean? But anyway, Allah has created us to have a sense of humor. You'll never see an animal making a joke, you know what I mean? You'll never see an animal smiling and laughing. But Allah created us humans, and we can demonstrate our humanity with some, fun and play and laughter as well. This is a sign of a human being operating at a higher level beyond the animal. I'll just give you an example. So let's say Abraham was in the same boat as Ibrahim alayhi salam, but not in the same boat as Nuh alayhi salam. It's just a joke. And so there is Ibrahim alayhi salam. Looking at the ways of his forefathers and what he was taught. What was he taught? And he just couldn't make sense of this. We're worshipping idols that we ourselves made with our own hands, that can't speak, and they can't do anything for themselves. And we're asking these things to do something for us. They can't benefit us, they can't in any way have any power over us, they can't harm us in any way. Yet they are innate. They are inanimate, actually. They're inanimate. They have no life at all of any kind. They, wood and carvings, whatever it is. And, this is what we're doing here. And he began to reflect and ponder at night, during the day. He starts realizing maybe the sun during the day, and then the sun goes down, is to be worshipped, to be turned to be focused on, to be revered. Human beings are created that we cannot depend on ourselves and each other. If you don't establish a relationship with your Creator, you will malfunction. You will live a meaningless life. Your whole thinking system will be meaningless. If you try to divide any number by 1, it remains the same number. In mathematics, it's called something. I forget. If you try to divide any number by 0, it's called meaningless. So it doesn't make sense. So until human beings become aware of their Creator and experience being secure with their Creator, that secured vulnerability, that assured vulnerability, until you have a relationship with your Creator, your mind is lost in meaninglessness. You're lost round and round in circles. I'll tell you this because I was one of them who denied Allah, associated partners, and was a hypocrite, said I believe, but I didn't. Until I chose to turn to Allah and to ask Him to guide me to Him. That what I want is faith in my heart. What I want is to bring to Allah a purified heart. What I want is to live and die as a believer, not just as one who submitted in religion. Because the Quran tells us a mu'min is a believer, is one who is secure. I want the guidance that heals the diseases in my heart. You understand? All human beings, Adam and Eve, were told that stay there and your people until guidance comes to you. Only when guidance comes to you, then you will no longer experience the insecurity. You will no longer be astray. The disease in your heart won't be expanded. But if you don't receive the guidance, the same guidance that was given to Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was pondering, and then he realized the one who created me will guide me. The one who created me heals me. He established a relationship with Allah as Tawheed. He established a relationship with Allah beyond all fictional mind ideas, satanic ideas of God. He became aware, he was guided, and he was guided to trust in Allah, and he trusted in Allah. And he became, a character that has been one of the most influential characters in history in terms of religion, at the very least. His people were the ones who continued to be guided, and even after Moses' people went astray, Isa came to give them guidance. They refused that guidance, and then the Prophet Muhammad was given to humanity. Shukr to Allah. The Quran. You understand? Through Ibrahim alayhi salam. And the Quran says, follow in the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who was a friend of Allah, who was intimate with Allah, who was close to Allah. Draw closer to Allah. Draw closer to Allah. The Quran says, prostrate and draw closer to Allah. You understand what I'm saying? That we all are lost until guidance comes to us. Until you become aware of Tawheed. You know what Tawheed is? The onlyness of Allah. The onlyness, the oneness of Allah. Allah is the unique and supreme. Beyond anything created is our Creator. Allah is the incomprehensible. Allah is the incomparable. Where you begin to focus beyond your mind's ideas of Allah. You see, Abraham's family had ideas about Allah. And other people have ideas about Allah. You yourself may have ideas about Allah that you might have got from other people who had ideas of Allah. But your ideas of Allah and your experience of Allah is two different things. And your ideas of Allah can hold you back from experiencing Allah consciousness. I can tell you this from personal experience. I went from having ideas of Allah in my mind and lost in this world through thinking, to submitting my ideas and my thinking and realizing Allah is before my thinking. Because of Allah, I can think, but I can't really think about Allah in a certain sense. You understand? I can only be aware of Allah and experience Allah consciousness. And that's what the beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was guided to become Allah conscious. The methodology of the Quran is awareness. Look around and see. The Quran didn't say to the Prophet, start a madrasa. Start a madrasa and enroll people into your madrasa. And teach them about the 5 pillars and teach them to read the Quran in a language they don't understand. The Quran didn't say that. Just get them to do the 5 pillars. Allah didn't say that. Allah's methodology in the Quran is to get human beings to reflect, to contemplate, to ponder, to reason. You understand? Thinking, beliefs are different from reasoning. Awareness, experiencing. This is called spiritual development. Spiritual development. You know, when you were little, you used to relate to money in a certain way. Either your parents gave you spending and you used it however you wanted to. But when you grow up, you relate to money differently. You have an awareness and an experiencing. You've contemplated things, you've reasoned, and now you have a different relationship with money than when you were a child. Hopefully, when you grow up, you show more appreciation and value, and you relate to money differently from the way you related to it as a child. Some people may still, as adults, look at money as something to indulge yourself with and cause debt for themselves. You know what I mean? Immature relationship with money. And you could have been like that, and you could have become mature after that, have a mature relationship with money. You know what I mean? And then you relate differently with money. Now, the same, when you were little and you had somebody in school of the opposite gender, and boys would relate to girls in a certain way, girls relate to boys in a certain way. Usually boys are more immature than girls. Girls are more mature than boys at a younger age. And a boy can be immature with a girl. You get what I mean? But then when you physically develop and you become a man or a woman, now the way you relate with the person in a spousal relationship is not like a child. Okay, right, okay. Some people who didn't develop, let's not just think this happens automatically. I wouldn't want you to think that your body automatically develops and your relationship with money automatically develops into an adult one. Or you become a man or a woman physically, physiologically, and that you automatically, psychologically relate to a partner, a spousal, as an adult and with another adult, and looking to harmony, looking to understanding and kindness. Allah put love and compassion in our hearts, that we may dwell with each other in tranquility. You get what I mean? But some people are spiritually underdeveloped too. And spiritual development just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. You got to support it, like you got to learn. If your parents didn't know how to relate to money and they made a mess of their finances, you're going to have to figure out and get some advice on how to relate to money. If your father and mother behaved like little children and they didn't know how to love each other as adults, you got a challenge. You got to find out and learn how to relate, how to respect yourself in a relationship, how to respect somebody else in a relationship, how to attract somebody who can respect you in a relationship. Some of us will get involved into relationships like many of us did. speaking for myself, you get involved unconsciously in a relationship, you behave like a child, the other person behaves like a child, or you realize you put somebody who behaves like a child, you realize, hey, I chose somebody without choosing properly, You chose. I know some people are superstitious and they think, no, Allah chose the partner for you. Allah doesn't choose your partner for you. Allah gave you the choice to choose. You are asked, do you want to take this man? But your level of awareness as your husband, excuse me, your level of awareness can be underdeveloped when you get married. And later on in life, a lot of people realize through the hard way, I made a bad choice. I chose poorly. You can learn sooner or later. Many of us go through a divorce, and some of us recreate that problem. We continue to be the same. We don't learn. We don't grow. You get what I mean? And hopefully, when you go through a divorce, you learn and grow, and you choose to experience that compassion and mercy in your heart. And choose somebody who has compassion and mercy in their heart. You see, this is why the Quran says believers must marry believers. Because it doesn't say Muslims must marry Muslims. It says believers must marry believers. What does that mean? One who has a relationship with Allah must choose another who has a relationship with Allah. The importance of relating to Allah. And so, Satan doesn't want you to become aware of Allah. Satan wants you to continue with the ideas that you had when you were little, your family taught you, continue in the ways of your forefathers. Satan doesn't want you to become aware of the presence of Allah and focus on Allah. Satan doesn't want you to do that. Satan will tell you, just keep your fasts in Ramadan, but don't put Iman in your heart. Pay your zakat, but don't put Iman in, don't have a relationship with Allah. Satan is the one that doesn't want you to be shakuran. He stands in the path and renders people ungrateful. Satan wants you to be unaware and unappreciative of Allah. The Quran says, which of the favors of your Lord do you deny? And every day I get messages oftentimes from people's messages, like messages like, when you're going through suffering, don't worry, and when you're going, Muslims, when, in suffering, you must suffer properly, and you must make sabar, and you must suffer. These are what I call existential pessimists. They don't know Allah's grace and graciousness. They are not shakuran. These people who focus on problems, like Allah gave us problems, The Quran tells us, the Prophet Lut ﷺ says, Satan has afflicted me with distress and suffering. It doesn't say Allah afflicted Lot with suffering. It doesn't say with distress and suffering. The Quran says Satan, he was listening to the whisperings of Satan. Satan, you understand, afflicted him with distress and suffering. And then he turns to Allah, and then he is patient, and then Allah is with him, and he's blessed. You understand? But there are many Muslims who are unaware of Allah, and they're unaware of Allah's grace. The first thing you'll realize when you become aware of Allah is His grace and His favors and what you've been given, and you will be shakuran. The hallmark of a believer is shakuran. They are grateful. You get what I mean? There are people who have these messages, we're suffering, help us God, help us God. They don't realize their suffering is because they don't have a relationship with Allah. The Quran says if you fail to remember Allah, Allah will fail to remember you. The Quran says if you continue to not receive guidance, and you live with a stray heart, a heart that is astray, you live without guidance, you live astray, and you have a disease in your heart. If you fail to remember Allah, yours will be a depressed life. The problems that these existential pessimists, I'm not judging them, I'm just saying that these poor people who have no relationship with Allah, who are creating their own problems because they're not really aware of Allah, they're not experiencing shakuran. What does the Quran says? The Quran says that those who are grateful, Allah will give more what? Problems, more suffering. Allah will favor, His favors will come upon us. See? So they don't want to see. There are many people. They don't want to see that they don't have a relationship with Allah, that they're still worshipping Satan. The Quran says if you don't worship Allah, you are worshipping Satan. They might say they are Muslims. I rather say they're Islamis, following a cult of Islamism. They don't have a relationship with Allah. They might just say, start a madrasa and follow the 5 pillars, but they bypass the most important thing, to go beyond ignorance, superstition and arrogance, to go beyond denial, to go beyond ignorance and arrogance, to go beyond association, to go beyond being a munafiq. The Quran says, many of them say they believe in Allah in the last day. They say, how many people do you know? You might even be one of them, who say you believe in Allah in the last day, but they don't believe. They think they're fooling Allah. They're only fooling themselves. How many people out there are fooling themselves? The Quran is telling us this. In their hearts is a disease and Allah leaves them to stray, the disease is expanded. You understand? If you don't have a relationship with Allah, if you don't become aware of the presence and feel secure with Allah, you're not a believer. You understand? And yours will be a depressed life. You're creating problems by not having iman in your heart. And you'll be saying, Allah, please help us, please help us. And there are people who say that diseases come from Allah, problems come from Allah. Quran is clear. Satan has afflicted me with distress and suffering, not Allah. He turns to Allah. If Allah gave him distress and suffering, what is he going to turn to Allah for? Satan. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani. I'm living in a way that keeps Allah's good away from me. I'm living without iman and amal. I'm living without halal and tayyib. Who knows what his eating habits were? Lut alayhi salam. Who knows whether he was eating halal and tayyib or what caused his disease? Who knows what's his role in his life? Who knows? You know what I mean? What Satan was telling him, just carry on anyhow. Don't worry about fid dunya fil akhirah. But he asked Allah for forgiveness. And he turned to Allah. And Allah is forgiving. That's what Allah is, forgiving. That's Allah, forgiving. He experienced Allah as being forgiving. You see, what am I saying here? I'm saying that when you're a believer, you're an existential optimist. You live feeling secure and you do not deny the favors of Allah. You feel secure and you know there's good for you in this world and the world beyond. You are shakuran. You're not on the path where Satan is there and is rendering you kafuran. You are aware of Allah. You are aware of Allah's grace. You're aware of Allah's grace. You live very differently from other people. I'm going to say this very briefly and I'll continue in the next week's lecture inshallah. That, when you try to sail a boat first time, things will, you put something in water, it sinks. But after a certain number of tries and with some kind of reasoning, people started floating things in water. And then you can have a boat, and then you can have a ship. This whole structure, sometimes it's like a hotel on the ocean, on water. What a thing. A ship so heavy, megatons, sailing in water. How is that possible? It's the principle of buoyancy. Principle of buoyancy. So similarly, the believer, when they live life, they feel assured. They feel assured. The security is assured. Their satisfaction is ensured. They know Allah has given. They're appreciative. That feeling in their hearts allows them to sail through life. You sail through life as a believer. You don't cause problems. Now, there were times when the Prophet asked for support. That wasn't for problems that he himself created. That was challenges. You can have challenges in life. For the believer, they will have challenges. Nothing bad happens to a believer because they don't create problems for themselves. But when some challenge happens, it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for development. So we believers are experiential optimists. We spiritual optimists. We feel good, assured, thankful, grateful. We're multidimensionally focused. We are aware and experiencing beyond that denying self, beyond that self that is associating, beyond that self that says it believes but it doesn't believe, beyond that self that is in the trance that Satan has whispered. You get what I mean? When you say A'udhu and you really want to have a relationship with Allah, Allah guides your heart. That's what the Quran says. And you are guided to Allah and you experience a feeling within you of well-being. That feeling of well-being is taqwa. Muttaqeen. The friends of Allah, they will never fear. They will never grieve. And that feeling causes you to sail through this world. You'll have challenges. The Prophet had challenges in teaching the message and spreading the message and sharing the message. There were forces of darkness that tried to stop him. They couldn't. Those were challenges. He was supported by Allah. But if you create problems for yourself and you ask Allah for help, but you created problems for yourself, don't expect help. Because you're not having a relationship with Allah. You're not following the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And if you are, living as a believer, strengthening your relationship with Allah, you take one step towards Allah. The Hadith Qudsi says, Allah takes 10 steps towards you. The same Hadith says, if you mention to Allah in an audience, Allah mentions you in a greater audience. You understand? When I'm mentioning Allah to you as a believer, Allah is mentioning me to a greater audience. So, in our lessons or lectures that we're going to be following through this year, you'll be able to look at a relationship with Allah and actually have a relationship with Allah and experience being this experiential optimist, feeling good. The Prophet always had a smile on his face. Generally speaking, he was an optimist. He told people, believe, have faith, it'll work out. See, so the people are lost, masses of them. They don't worship Allah, they don't have a relationship with Allah. Their hearts are diseased. They are astray. And Allah leaves them to stray because they don't want to become aware of Allah. Satan has got them, they are with Satan basically. And so in the subsequent lectures, inshallah, we'll look at this challenge of presencing Allah in your life and what stops us from presencing Allah in our life, how we are Satan's tricks to not become aware of Allah and experience Allah consciousness, inshallah. All praise, glory and thanks is due to Allah Almighty, His choicest blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.